Side is literally a swampy mess 100 miles from the sea, where few people lived before 1800. New York City, on the other hand, is surrounded by broad and navigable rivers, protected by a series of barrier islands, and sits only 7 nautical miles from the open ocean. You would be hard-pressed to create a more ideal natural setting for a harbor city if you tried. Things were even better on land, where there were fortunes to be made. According to American mythology, Europeans came to this continent and this city in search of freedom. And sure, perhaps some did. But money and dreams of wealth played a larger role. After all, the East India Company of the Netherlands didn't finance a permanent New Amsterdam colony in Lower Manhattan just for the sake of liberty. The British didn't later wrestle that colony away from the Dutch and then make a strategic bid to hold it at all costs against the rebellious Americans just for the sake of freedom. Forget those patriotic fairy tales. Cash ruled everything around Manhattan. And even back in the day, New York City was a moneymaker. Early on, that meant beaver skins, as well as the pelts of otters, mink, and muskrats. Later, it was fish and oysters. More oysters than the world had ever seen. Eventually, that small, original Dutch settlement at the tip of southern Manhattan spread out in every direction, including up. The landscape was totally remade, all in the name of profit and progress, in the name of America. There was so much to be had back then that the supply seemed endless. There was no sense in worrying for the future. Forbearance, prudence, conservation? Forget about it. The trash could be burned, tossed into the wetlands, hauled out to sea, or better yet, dealt with later. Surely the good times of natural prosperity, free from want, consequence, and repercussion, would last forever. As the story goes, though, things went to shit. In some cases, literally. The harbor was overfished and simultaneously inundated with human waste. The forests were cut down. The streams were paved over. The beavers were trapped, replaced with litter in their river habitats should they ever consider returning. The air was poisoned. Many birds were driven to the brink of extinction. The natural borders of the shoreline were pushed out until one constant bulkhead emerged, destroying countless habitats while leaving the city needlessly vulnerable to flooding. And the garbage, it was piled hundreds of feet high, higher than the Statue of Liberty, until finally the landscape was unsuitable for the natural world and barely any better for humans. Incredibly, in that relatively short period of 350 years between the arrival of the Dutch to the end of the 1960s, New York City, once an ecological and natural gem, the likes of which had never been seen before, was all but ruined. By the time landmark environmental regulations, such as the Clean Water Act of 1972, were enacted, a cross-species urban exodus was already underway. Indeed, it wasn't just the animals that were leaving. New York City's human population declined in the 1970s, for the first and only time in its history, or at least since as long as such records have been kept. Many refer to this period as the city's dark days, when those who could afford to do so left for the suburbs, and those who remained endured a diseased city, a bruised apple rotting to its core. Pollution and environmental degradation were only part of the story, but by no means did they play an insignificant role in this blighted chapter of New York history. Nobody wanted to live in this mess, not the people, and certainly not the animals. Wild City is a reminder of what happens when society doesn't consider how its actions play out downstream. These are the stories of those collisions between nature and our urban experiment. At times, this relationship has been misguided. Other times, it's been cruel. There have been quite a few surprises and plenty of unintended consequences. But this book is also a story of redemption, about a city once epitomized by blight and pollution that now towers above its peers as an example of balanced and sustainable urban living. Although it seemed like a long shot just a few decades ago, New York City actually has cleaned up its act, as well as its harbor.